Hamilton.
Oh, is this Epic Rap Battles of History?
No,
No,
no. This one of the
Oh,
founders of LinkedIn, I think, put it out.
repost the link because it won't be.
oh,
Yeah, it's
that's
also I put it in the Discord humor channel.
that is friggin' awesome. I really miss Epic Rap Battles of History. I think they've ceased doing their thing, but it's good to see that somebody's doing some rap battles.
Yeah, it's fun. You'll like it.
Okay, I will definitely look at that. That's really cool. Who all do we have on the call today? I can't
The
see.
usual suspects.
All right, is Nora on the call?
She is.
Awesome, Nora. You should tell us a little bit about your experience with Tom.
Who's Tom?
I would love to.
Please.
Okay, well, sure. I was in Seattle last week, and well, actually, I was an hour outside of Seattle, kind of in northern exposure, Twin Peaks territory, which was a beautiful place. We were in a town called Roslyn, and about 25 of us from around the world, from New Zealand, Buenos Aires, let's see, where else? Japan, where else? All around the United States, Seattle, many places, rented a house, a huge house, and we made music for a week, basically around the clock. And we did a show, and Greg came to the show, and we recorded a bunch of new music, and we put a bunch of it on Facebook and some of it on Instagram. And the group is called Tiny Orchestral Moments, so you can find it on social media. But anyway, so we did that, and yeah, so we had this really fun show, and we did that at the Kirkland Performance Center, and that was really fun. And then on the last day, we all went to Greg's recording session at Bear Creek Studios, which is where people like Lionel Richie and the Lumineers and Vance Joy and a bunch of amazing bands have recorded in the past. But anyway, we went to this amazing place where I've made some records with some other people. And anyway, it's this beautiful barn and tree house and state-of-the-art recording studio on the outskirts of Seattle. And we all went there, like maybe 20 of us, I guess. And we joined Greg in the Crown there, and Fiber. And Petra Hayden was there. I don't know if you guys know Petra Hayden, but she's the daughter of Charlie Hayden, the famous jazz bassist. So she was there. And also Beth Quist, who's from Cirque du Soleil, and also Bobby McFerrin's group. She was there singing with Greg's group. And then we brought all of our people from Tom. Well, most of the people who didn't have to fly out, but and we all made some music together. There was a piece that was a tribute to João Gilberto, which Greg wrote, which was amazing. And we also did some really interesting soundscapes, which were attributed to, I think, Warsaw, Poland. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. So the piece is called Warsaw. That's right.
Right, Warsaw, right. And then there was also some group improvisation, and then my brother and I ended up switching instruments, which was really crazy. We were in the mood, I guess. So yeah, so I ended up playing mandolin, and then he ended up playing violin, which was really fun. And so yeah, we just had like a really fun time. So yeah, it was just a week of, you know, all of us living in one house together, and it was really fun to see you, Greg, and on the last day. And I don't know if anybody's ever seen The Real World on MTV, that reality show, but it's kind of like the real world. But yeah, so that's where I was last week, and it was it's not the kind of place where you have any time to yourself at all. So it was really fun. So there you go.
Thank you. Thank you. Were there any principles from Tom that you feel are important or had impact for you?
You mean personally, or like with regard to our chain, or either?
Either one. Just something that really, you know, like in terms of, you know, the principles that underlie how Tom operates.
Yeah, actually, definitely. I mean, well, the guy who runs it is this guy called Steve Ball, and he's been with Microsoft for like, I don't know, 25 plus years. So he's another one of these like very multi-dimensional people. And yeah, and there's definitely a lot of principles about the work that I feel are very useful for organizing a team and also organizing your personal life. Like the first one that he talks about all the time is the spirit of continuous improvisation, meaning that no matter what happens, you have to always keep making it up because you don't know what's going to happen. Kind of reminds me of that Mike Tyson thing that everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. And there's another one about instantaneous forgiveness for yourself and for the people around you. He's always reminding us of that all the time, about how we have to constantly forgive each other for the things that we haven't done yet or the things that we're about to do, you know? Because, when you're working with a lot of people from around the world, don't always speak the same language, or there's like, because when we arrive, so all of us arrive, some of us know each other from other projects, some of us don't know each other. Like my brother was there, he was the lead sound engineer, like we converted the basement into a recording studio, like whatever, that was really cool. But like, some of us don't know each other, and there was an incident, like we had to have an ambulance come to the house because somebody was sick. Like things happen, and like you have to, sometimes you have to like slow down progress, sometimes people's pieces have to be cut from the repertoire, sometimes like our truck had a flat tire on the way to the show, and so like we like basically didn't have almost all of our gear for the sound check. Like all these things can like happen, and they can stress people out, and so whether they're under people's control or not, or they're just divine intervention, so yeah, the instantaneous forgiveness principle for yourself and for other people. And I also think like for yourself, it's sometimes even more important, because sometimes we lash out at other people because we haven't forgiven ourselves for something. I've learned that a lot over the course of the last week. Sometimes you're mad at yourself, so you're mad at everyone else. So there's that. I don't know, there's so many very interesting principles. But yeah, it's basically, one last one maybe I'll tell you about is keeping your 2 feet on the floor whenever you're stressed out. That's a really good one. Whenever you're trying to coordinate with a team, or whenever you need to recalibrate yourself with the present moment, you just feel your 2 feet on the floor, like if you're standing or you're sitting. Is that a Robert Fripp thing?
It goes back a bit further than that.
Gurdjieff or something.
Something like that, yes. Something like that.
Anyway, so yeah, we kind of do that as a group a lot, just so that we can try not to let our heads explode. Because yeah, when we first get there, we arrived on Sunday, and then we kind of met each other on Monday, and then we had a show on Wednesday night. So we basically have like 48 hours to create a show, which is insane. And like that means we have to like compose the material, rehearse the material, like we have to like do all this stuff. And like some of the material we have from years past, but like a lot of it is new, and it can be really stressful, but it's also really fun, and it's a really insane project. So anyway, there's some principles. I've probably gone on way too long, but there you go.
Thank you.
Yep.
No, I really appreciate that. I'm always interested to get different people's perspectives. I mean, Steve and I have worked together for 21 years.
Yeah, totally.
And we work together with Robert within the guitar circle tradition um, or sort of community.
Hmm.
And a lot of what goes on with Tiny Orchestral Moments has its roots in that. So Steve and I have a particular perspective and history, and I'm always curious, like when someone like yourself who sort of didn't come up in the guitar craft community, like what's your take on things? I think that's really interesting and important. I mean, I guess another reason I'm asking is because I feel like that work is a model for how we can work together, and how what is possible with goodwill and a little bit of focus and all of these things like instantaneous forgiveness. What becomes possible? I think if you were to put to various communities, okay, you've got 2 days, 3 days to put together a show, they'd say that's impossible. You can't do it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Or
Right?
like, you have to put people together from all these different countries, and you have to make something beautiful out of these people, and you have a
Yeah.
house and no recording studio. Good luck.
Exactly. And I feel like those principles are also apply. We've got a planet that's melting, and we have to find a way to improvise. We have to improvise a way out of this mess.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's gonna require a lot of instantaneous forgiveness.
Right.
And
And continuous improvisation and the feet on the floor. Yeah. I agree. And like one other really interesting thing about it is like, I feel like the good communities in the world, the good cooperative communities in the world, I feel like they are really good at collecting people like I came to this project. I kind of, in a really twisted, accidental, completely totally accidental way, I sort of helped invent this project, because what had happened was all of these guitarists came to Los Angeles the week of my birthday in 2015, and my brother was one of them. They had been hired to work with Frank Ocean on a music festival, and this is a very sort of well-known story in certain circles. Anyway, Frank Ocean canceled his concert last minute after he flew like 30 guitar players in this idiom from around the world to Los Angeles. My brother was one of them, and he canceled his show. It was at Fuck Yeah Fest, replaced his act with Kanye. This is verifiable in the press. Anyway, okay. So now they're all out here, and they were like, what are we going to do? Let's do a different show, because the show was canceled. And so I was, here, living here. My brother was out here, which is a very rare occasion. And I had my violin, because I always have my violin. He was like, why don't you stop by one of our rehearsals? Because they decided to have a show in Venice instead. So I came by, and then Steve and Paul Richards from the California Guitar Trio, they just opened for King Crimson at the Greek Theater like 2 nights ago. Anyway, they were like, why don't you play violin on this song called Blockhead? There's a video of that on YouTube. And that was like a really, I don't know, what do you call that? Sort of taboo thing, because a guitar circle is supposed to be a guitar circle, and they're sort of inviting like, the special guest, which was me. And a lot of people that were there that day really did not want that to happen. But anyway, Steve sort of kind of insisted that this happened. They made a YouTube video of it, and it like basically that was sort of the birth of Tiny Orchestral Moments, because it was sort of like an evolution of this work. And anyway, he invited, like, now there's all sorts of different people that are in Tiny Orchestral Moments now. There's accordion, there's singers, there's like saxophone, there's like, talking drum, there's like every single instrument you could possibly imagine now. But like that day, so I went for one rehearsal and I stayed for 4 years. Like that's basically what happened to me. I got like sucked in. And Aubrey, my brother's bandmate, she came for lunch the other day, and then she stayed for like 4 days. And so I feel like that's what happens is like if you just get a one glimmer of the community sometimes, and like you have a connection to somebody, or you have a connection to the work they're doing, whatever it is, music, technology, you know, whatever it is the project is working on, you might, you know, stay for a lot longer than you were expecting to stay. I thought I was just playing on one song, and now I've been, you know, like in the core team of four years of these projects. You know what I mean? Like that was not my intention. I just wanted to come say hi to my brother. That was not what was going on. You know, so hopefully we can make some of that magic happen with the RChain community. People come to one meeting, or they come to one event, or they come, you know, for one, you know, they come hang out in one little Discord thing, and then they like, you know, they're like, oh my God, this is so amazing, and they stay for years. You know?
Yes, exactly. And a lot of it has to do with you know, those principles, and just and in you know, the guitar circle community has had to deal with a lot of stuff, right? It's a lot of work being a community and staying together. Uh, yeah, we actually the Seattle Circle put on a show called Tiny Orchestral Moments for 12 weeks. And that's where the name came from. And Steve was involved in that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
nobody tells me anything.
that's okay. No, it's
Nigel always says about me, she was born yesterday, but she stayed up all night.
it's you know, I mean, I guess the point is that a lot of different threads come together to make these things work. It's never just one thread, and it's never just one.
No, of course. I just wanted to tell that story because Steve says that, you know, that was one of the moments that kind of led him down this direction of kind of wanting to really start this thing.
Yeah,
but
and
I know that of course there were many moments. Yeah, of course, tiny moments.
Lots of tiny moments, tiny orchestral moments. That's exactly right.
Of course.
Yes. Yeah. And for people who don't have a taste of it, it's very difficult to convey. I think many musicians, I think Daryl's on the call, Daryl has a taste of it from a different direction from his own experiences. Maybe Ned and Fabian also have a taste of it from a different direction. But there's a quality, and what I've tried to say is that we have to start getting explicit about those qualities, because that's what, if the work is imbued with meaning, if the work is imbued with a sense of purpose and a sense of joy, then people come back, and they keep coming back, and they find themselves staying with the project for 4 years or 21 years or possibly even longer. And that's the kind of the quality of engagement that we need. You know, somehow it feels spontaneous and crazy and fun, and yet it, you know, the present moment spins out over this longer period of time, and amazing things get done along the way. And it's almost as if the results are more like an accident, because what's really happening is that we're being together in this joyful way.
Yes.
And I think that ultimately is more practical. You know, I think a lot of times we want to fall back to, you know, corporate habits or other kind of business habits, but those ways of working have really got us into a mess. And I'm not joking about it. I'm in many ways I'm deadly serious. Those ways of working have really gotten the whole planet into a mess. And I feel like we now have to work in different ways, and we have to kind of explicitly acknowledge that the ways in which we work are going to be different. They're going to feel different, and they're going to feel strange and at odds with, the sort of the business as usual. um,
Well, I was really encouraged to see that there was on the mainstream news. I can't remember what network it was, CNN or MSNBC. Maybe somebody can tell me. But I saw there was an actual climate town hall. There was a real debate, on mainstream news. It was hours long. It was like a real thing with all the candidates. It was amazing.
that's fantastic. I
It
heard
was
that it was.
fantastic. I was seeing some highlights and they were really good.
That's really good news, because
Fortunately, it should have
I'd been.
happened 20 years ago, but it's okay. Okay, so we're making progress.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. Well, people don't start paying attention to things until it's right in their backyard, right?
So it's definitely in their backyard now. I mean, I was really beginning to think that this town hall / debate was not going to happen.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
So
A similar thing a similar thing happened, like after I posted the bulletin, that I posted on the blog.
yes,
The Chinese community has come forward and said, "Well, okay, tell us how our chain can help with climate change."
yes,
And which is fantastic, because now a door has opened, right? And now we can begin to have that discussion.
yes,
And in many ways we've been preparing for that, right? So there was the blog back in April, in which we talked about blockchain as in terms of political discourse, and we've been preparing sort of this, scenarios where blockchain can help with climate change. And so now we get a chance to step up the game and begin to have this conversation. And I'm very excited about that. I think this is what has to happen. And part of the reason I wanted you to share your experience with Tom is because the connection to music is not accidental. It's real, and it's powerful. This other way of working, that you've been describing, that is grows up out of sort of being musical, is and we can be musical in lots of different ways, right? That is again a part of a practical shift that has to take place.
right. The harmony of people, that whole thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Learning how to be in community in a harmonious way. It sounds airy fairy to some. It sounds, woo woo. But at the end of the day, it's a practical requirement.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I mean, it might sound like stupid, like why would you fly everybody around from around the world just to like make a bunch of music and do a show and make some records and then go home? But like you could also do that for like any purpose, Like once you figure out how to work with people like that, like you could do that for any reason you wanted to do, like, but you have to figure out how to work with people like that, because
Yeah.
if you get them all together, you don't know how to work like that, then
Things can go absolutely wrong. There's no question about it.
right. Then you
Unless
you might not get the result that you want, because like we almost don't get the results that we want, even with like all the
with
discipline and the cooperation that like we have, like we still
and the
almost have it fall
experience.
apart all the time.
That's exactly right. So everything is teetering on the edge. And you have to be willing and able to accept that kind of risk. Where
Teetering
you're
on the edge. Yes, I remember something Rachel Maddow said once: careening toward the cul-de-sac.
That's very funny. Well, I feel like I would love to. I'd love to widen out the conversation and see if there's any response to these
Yes.
sort of very madcap propositions that we've put out there. Stay. I'll be right back.
Bueller. Bueller.
Hello? Hello?
Oh, Daryl.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I've been enjoying this talk. Yeah, so I do think that it's important for us to kind of really define for people how, in fact, our chain is going to help with these issues that we're talking about. And to me, it's just like there's so many ways. But the one that I'm kind of most focused on is the whole concept of social coordination. And I agree that music is the um, best way to start off a system that requires rapid social coordination and rapid decision making, finding the good decisions, the right decisions quickly, and collectively is going to be vitally important. I think that as we move forward, we're going to be experiencing more of the dealing with climate change in the emergency response aspect of things, and dealing with migration, mass migration of people. And so what has to happen is we have to develop collective self-awareness as a species for the first time. Now, this is what I love about Daniel Schmachtenberger, is he kind of seems to really confront the awkward concept that we actually have to radically transform ourselves as a species in order to deal with this problem. And like Greg has been saying, the traditional Western form of capitalism is at the very least partly to blame for what has happened. So we need to radically transform out of that into something new. The old Marxist versus Hayek debates are tired and old. They don't apply anymore. We need to move forward. So I think that as we develop social coordination technologies, blockchain is going to not only play a big part, it's going to become the vital part. This is why I'm here, because like I believe that that blockchain will be the key ingredient to developing this radical transformation that we have to go through.
Thank you, Daryl. That was really, really well said. And you know, I think that what we're going to have to do now is to take that down about 5,000 feet so that people can begin to see examples. So you know, some of the examples that we've talked about have to do with identity, right? So once you can put identity on the blockchain, then when people are displaced, they don't lose their identity. And if they don't lose their identity, then they don't have to lose credentials, right? So, you know, a doctor who has their identity on the blockchain and their associated medical credentials on the blockchain doesn't lose that if they have to be displaced from, you know, Malibu, California to Argentina, or the other way around. So that's one particular way that happens, and there are many examples of this kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's going to require.
Does that make?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to require some type of a globally neutral body, like the efforts towards the IPFS, you know, the efforts towards OMI. We need some kind of like open global body that that is neutral and trusted. And I don't know. I might be controversial here in saying this, but I believe that it's important to, rather than there's so many people in the blockchain space who kind of look at it as the Ronald Reagan approach to government. You know, government is the problem, and I disagree with that. I think that in many ways, blockchain is going to help us improve government. This is what we need. We need to improve governance. We don't need to just throw it out, maybe with the bathwater approach. We need to actually improve governments so that they can correspondingly deal with the radical changes that are occurring. And there's so many ways that blockchain can help improve governance and improve governments, increase transparency, expose the trough of money that goes into making decisions in our democracies. You know, when I think about like the next 10 years in blockchain, I think about major improvements to our democracies and our governments in the world. And so I guess that's a bit of a tangent, but you know, this is to me another thing that is required. Just like at the beginning of the web period, like in the 90s, there was so much exciting talk about the changes that are about to come and what's going to happen and how it's going to create more freedom for individuals and yada, 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 yada. And that same kind of excitement is happening now. And I think that we can learn from the mistake of the 90s and make sure that we actually create some individual freedom this time around. I think it will involve kind of being ahead of the curve. And to me, that's what our chain is. Our chain is ahead of the curve in the whole correct by construction, Casper protocol stuff. And so, you know, that's why I'm here.
Amen.
In this regard, I have to toot our horn a little bit. Recently, we've been working with some observed network dynamics, and you can't get these kind of wacky equilibria problems until you're close enough to the real thing that you can start to see the equilibrium issues. So we've been wrestling with this situation where in Casper, one of the validators can sort of rabbit ahead of the other ones because even if they're all sort of more or less the same machine, you know, with the same compute and storage and bandwidth capabilities, if you get if one of them gets a little bit of an edge in terms of proposing and replay. So we're talking about proposing blocks and replaying blocks. Then it can sort of jump out in front of the others, and the others don't get a chance to do anything but catch up to the proposals. But the beautiful thing is that the justification structure of the blocks, which we use to do safety, can play in resolving this particular liveness issue. Right, so this is effectively a form of liveness in the sense that the others get starved of certain communication opportunities or compute opportunities. But if you insist that good blocks in their justification structure have a kind of player-opponent sort of structure, then you can prevent this from happening. So you can look at the block structure that Casper uses and insist that there's a kind of alternation. So what happens in the rabbiting ahead phenomenon is that the only justifications on the blocks are from the rabbit. So the rabbit says, well, you know, This block I'm proposing is justified by this other block, which I just proposed, which is justified by this other block, which I just proposed, right? And so there's no alternation between, the rabbit and the tortoises. But if you insist that there must be an alternation in a well proposed block, then you get a liveness constraint. It's actually a synchronization constraint that prevents this problem. So we're just now beginning to see the value of the correct by construction approach. The whole shape of the solution lends itself to, like, once you see where the problem lies. Like at first we weren't sure if it was a bug or if it was one of these funny equilibria problems. And we spent the last 12 days collecting data. Having collected the data, we now know, we feel quite confident that we know what the issue is, and we can resolve the problem using the correct by construction apparatus.
Hey, Greg,
which is,
can I ask a question?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
how does that, how do I say this? I don't want to say dummying down, but how does that leveling the playing field so tortoises have an equal opportunity with hares not reward people for having less than optimal hardware who would also end up being tortoises?
Yeah, so the nice thing is it's very flexible. So you get to have a range of synchronization constraints. But the fact is that, you can't have, if you, in the limit, you either go towards the high end and you have one fast player dominating all the other players, or you go towards the low end and it's the slowest thing dictating the rate at which everything else goes. And what you're looking for is disciplines that allow you to go in between those, and that's what you can get with this alternation, because you're not requiring that you go as slow as the slowest one. You're only requiring that you have good alternation. So good alternation can be done in terms of a percentage of stake. So you can propose a block not when you have to have all the other validators, but only enough of them with or enough stake from validators that are not yourself. And so now you're not going at the rate of the slowest one. You're going at the rate that's basically matches the distribution of stake.
Could there be a coordinated? I'm just trying to figure out the edge cases here. Could there be a coordinated effort of a majority of people to have a lot of stake but very low bandwidth, if you will, to force the network to be slower?
Not if you have a randomized selection for pool from the pool, right? So that was the whole point of that randomized. So you have so many people that are sort of so many validators that are being rotated out at a particular point, and that randomization prevents those kinds of coordinated attacks.
Yeah, kind of like a coordinated slowdown attack.
Yeah, you could do that if you didn't have this randomization element.
Okay, but the randomization, as I understood it, is forcing people out of the validator pool. But if I'm investing all this capital,
yes, but yes, of course,
right?
And yes, and we balance that out by having the period in front of joining the validator pool. So that's the balancing force there. But there's never going to be an optimal solution. Please understand that, right? These problems don't have optimal solutions. They only have equilibria, and you have to decide where which set of equilibria you want to support.
Yeah, no, I get that. I'm just thinking, if I have invested all this money to be a validator, and now at these random intervals, I'm going to be removed from basically the reward pool. Or was that the answer? It's not being removed from the reward pool, but just being removed at that moment from the. You know what I'm saying? It's like
I understand what you're saying is, and what we can do is give you ranges of guaranteed income. So you can still do resource planning.
Okay. Have those
Yeah.
been worked out yet, or that's still in process?
I mean, we have, you know, parameterized formula. We haven't plugged in the numbers.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. But anyway, the point is that we utilize these techniques to go after what are normally incredibly challenging and hard problems, right? There's not a there's not a network protocol that doesn't face these kinds of problems when you're designing them. But the techniques that are available in Casper allow us to kind of rapidly zero in on solutions, and those solutions, I would recommend, there's a book called Behave, which looks at social behavior across many levels. So genetic components of social behavior, physical components of social behavior, cultural components of social behavior, and you can see that the kinds of things that nature deals with in protocol design is exactly the kind of thing that we're dealing with in the design of a good core protocol for the blockchain. And it's really important that if we want to scale, that we follow the expert at scaling, which is nature, as much as we possibly can. And the techniques that are utilized in the Casper design allow us to do exactly that. And the sort of the wider point is that, again, these, what appears to be theoretical or airy-fairy, or I don't know how to say, I don't know what the right pejorative term here is. They end up being very much a part of the practical solutions. So in the same way that the Tom principles might appear to be foreign or strange, the same kinds of principles show up in the design considerations for Casper, and they end up being what makes it practical. I think we're getting close to the staff meeting time. Any final comments from anyone?
That was a nice way of circling right back to the practical concept.
Cool.
The book Behave, is it called Behave, the Biology of Humans at Our Best and Worst?
Yes, I think that's the subtitle, yes.
Awesome. It's available as an audiobook. I am about to download it. Thank you very much.
Of course. I mean, one of the most remarkable things that I learned from that book is that there is actually a genetic marker for people who are more likely to lean towards collectivism versus people who are more likely to lean towards solitude and self-sustaining, self-reliance kinds of social organization.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's actually in the genes. People who are and there's good evidence that this was selected for by a variety of environmental conditions. So pastoral, solitary herders are more likely to have a particular genetic marker, and that marker is associated with being more of a loner, being more self-reliant, being more, leaning towards, the less government perspective.
Right.
And people who have grown up in cultures where they they have to do agriculture together, like rice farming, for example. They have and have been selected for genetic markers that make them more inclined towards collectivism and social structures that sort of put the collective first.
Well, it's my hope that we use this genetic data to help us figure out how to get along better rather than some form of eugenics.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like, like having a good informed scientific view is part of how we keep 2 feet on the ground.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So maybe with that, we switch over to the staff meeting. Thanks to all for the conversation today.
Thank you, Greg. And Nora and everybody.
All right. See you guys. Actually, I won't
Thank
be here
you.
next week, but we'll see you the week after.